children, our families, and the staff that assist us with that. So we do this press conference today to bring awareness to our parents, to the families, to the property owners, that we know change has to occur, but we want to be part of that and we want to assist, but without stripping away the support for public ed, the fire department, the police department, and our libraries. So we have some thoughts and concerns that we want everyone to hear, that we want to share, because we don't know what public education is going to look like in 5 to 10 years if Ohio continues in this direction. Right now I'd like to call Carrie Weir, the superintendent of the Northwest Ohio ESC.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning. I'd like to make some comments regarding shared services, collaboration, and efficiencies. Across Ohio, 51 Educational Service Centers, or ESCs, serve as regional partners within our state's public education system. Together, we help school districts collaborate, share services, and operate more efficiently. We do not levy taxes, but receive a small state subsidy, and that is based on our size, and our districts contract with us for shared services based on their needs. ESCs have been a vital part of Ohio's educational support network for more than a century. We were established in 1914, and we are written into state law as trusted partners to schools. Here in Northwest Ohio, the Northwest Ohio ESC supports 23 public school districts and our vocational school in providing shared programs in special education, early childhood, curriculum, professional development, and more. One powerful example is our regional program for students with significant hearing disabilities. This program serves children from multiple districts and counties, allowing them to learn together in a supportive environment integrated within the Archibald Local School District, while the ESC enables districts to share staff, equipment, and specialized expertise that no single district could sustain alone. This is the strength of the ESC model: collaboration, efficiency, and equitable access to quality education for every student. It's a model that's replicated across our state, demonstrating the deep commitment of Ohio's public school districts to fiscal accountability, maximizing resources, and saving taxpayer dollars. Again, this model is in place and operational throughout our state. Ohio's public schools educate nearly 90% of our state's students, and they must be adequately funded at the state level so collaboration can continue without overburdening local taxpayers. Recent legislation proposals threaten to limit education funding, which has remained relatively stagnant for many years and already falls well below the national average. At the Northwest Ohio ESC, we believe strong schools build strong communities. Throughout shared services, we help make the strength possible every day. I urge everyone to reach out to your state and federal leaders to express support for public education and to oppose any legislation that would reduce public school funding either directly or indirectly. Thank you. Next, I'd like to bring up Kevin O'Shea from Otsego.
Good morning. I'm Kevin O'Shea. I'm the superintendent of Otsego Local Schools. I'm here to represent the little guy. Otsego is a very small rural community. We have roughly 1,700 students with a strong kind of agricultural tradition and background. We don't get a lot of the press and the glamour, but I'm here today to support my colleagues because the legislation has recently been proposed, House Bill 186, will have a devastating impact on our district and other small rural districts like ours. House Bill 186 sounds like a property tax relief bill, and it looks like it on paper. But for small public schools like us, this will have a devastating impact. If passed, Otsego is estimated to be cut $3 million over the next 3 years, and a lack of that funding is a death sentence to our programs, to our staffing and all the opportunities for our students and staff that we give every single day. 30 years ago, public education was funded in a way that was far more balanced. About 46% of the revenue that came in was our local farmers and our residents. But today, that has been completely flipped on its head, and we see about 70% of that funding going to our farmers and our local residents. Today, that balance is completely flipped, and I'm here to kind of bring light to that to our community members. That shift didn't happen by accident. It's the direct result of decades of legislation that has pushed more and more of the cost of educating Ohio's children onto the backs of our families and our communities. That same legislation, the same legislator today has said that there's not enough money for public schools. But on the same hand, they also say that there's $2 billion set aside for private schools, and that's public dollars funding private education. And let's be clear, these are often families that can afford or who are already going to those private schools, and yet their decisions are now being subsidized by your taxpayers. It's a system where working families and rural districts like ours are left behind. We're not asking for special treatment, we're asking for fairness. Public education is the great equalizer in our country. It's where every child, regardless of zip codes, gets access and opportunity. House Bill 186 threatens to strip away the very foundation of rural and small-town communities and schools that hold those communities together. When you take $3 million away from Otsego local schools, you are not cutting a line budget item. You are cutting teachers, you're cutting bus routes, extracurriculars, and the future that our kids have and rely on us for. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce Troy Armstrong from Waseon next.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm Troy Armstrong, Superintendent of Waseon Exempt Village School District, and I'm going to talk about the myth of exploding school budgets. Despite what you may hear, school funding hasn't exploded. In fact, over the last 20 years, schools have been asked to take on significantly more, from advanced technology to safety upgrades to expanded student support. But the funding to pay for these initiatives has barely budged. When you adjust for inflation, state revenue per student has grown by a fraction of a percent each year. Schools are being asked to do a lot more with essentially the same resources. Let's talk about state revenue and how it has not kept pace. From 2000 to 2022, overall state revenue actually decreased by 2.2% after inflation. On a per student basis, state revenue grew just 6.6% over 22 years. That's only about 0.3% a year. In other words, state funding for each student has been essentially flat for 2 decades. School spending increases look big until you break them down. Overall, school spending rose 9.4% over 22 years. That's only 0.3% of a year after inflation. On a per student basis, spending grew 19.4% over 22 years, or about 0.88% a year after inflation. Less than 1% growth per year is hardly the massive increase some claim. Next, we'll talk about expectations that have skyrocketed while funding has not. Schools are asked to provide far more today than in 2000. New technology, safety measures, mental health supports, career readiness pathways, and more. Yet the dollars to support those responsibilities have stayed nearly flat. Thank you. Next, we'll have Superintendent Chris Lake from Swanton Schools.
Morning, Chris Lake, Superintendent Swanton Local. Thank you for coming today. Article 6, Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution declares, "The General Assembly shall make such provisions by taxation or otherwise, as with the income arising from the school trust fund, will secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state." but no religious or other
have questions, but I don't know if it's best to do it as a group or not.
Yeah, all good. I'll ask for the betterment of the group. Obviously, a very appealing tip of the iceberg, right? This bill being pushed in Ohio. Obviously, a lot of conservative lawmakers are pushing towards this tax reform and kind of creating tax breaks on property taxes for Ohioans. More times than not, it's beneficial for affluent areas and affluent school districts, but to the local, kind of at times ignorant voter, right? They hear a tax break, they hear, property taxes going down. That's a good thing for them, and they might not do their due diligence to look up at the legislature and see how these impacts happen. So for you guys, for someone in your district, for the regular voter, for the common person, what would you say to them when they read or hear, hey, this is a tax break? We're helping rural Ohioans, working class Ohioans, middle class Ohioans. We're here to help you. We're giving you a tax break. What would you say to those people who might not do their due diligence?
So I'll speak and anyone else can join in. But we all agree that property tax reform is needed. We all live in our communities, we all live in Ohio, we agree with that. So if the local property tax is reduced and the state share stays where it's at, which is low, then we have to come up with revenue in our school district somehow. And our avenue to do that is to make reductions and or go back to the local voters and ask for more money. So that's what I would say to the local. Yes, we all agree. Property taxation needs to become fairer. But the state has to step up and increase the state share to all of our school districts so that we don't have to go back to our local taxpayers yet again and ask for more money.
I would say too that, if you go back in time, Kevin touched on it in his comments. Dr. Belcher put together a really nice graph that he shared with us the other day. If you go back 40, 50 years, the state was taking on more of the responsibility to fund local schools. Over time, they have slowly pushed off their responsibility on the local communities. And now we're at a point where, and I've said this before, we as school districts have to operate within the boundaries of the rules that the state creates for us. And we have been doing that. And as they have pushed the responsibility onto the local, voters, we've had no choice in order to fund our operations. And I'm telling you, the myth that schools, they have all this money, like we operate on a very tight budget. And we try to live within our means. And now the legislature is effectively weaponizing the system that they created against us. They point the finger at us and say, oh, you guys, you're always, crying, emergency or crying you're broke, while they slowly starve us of the funds that we need. And they've been doing this now for several years. And they talk about us as if somehow we're a drain on our communities. I am probably one of the largest, if not the largest employer in my community. A lot of people can say the same about their school districts. Especially us smaller schools. We are the center of our community. Everybody's there on a Friday night. I joke that you could rob every home in Swanton on a Friday because everybody's going to be at the football game, right? So that has been, I think, particularly troublesome for us. So when we try to talk to taxpayers, we say, listen, the legislature have washed their hands of their constitutional responsibility. I mean, that's why our system was found to be unconstitutional. It was too much reliance on local property taxes. And they ignored that decision for years and years and years. And when we finally do have a plan that is working, the leadership down there in Columbus decides to abandon the plan because it doesn't fit with their narrative, which is A, public schools are awful, and B, they want everybody to go to a private school. And that's just what we've been left with. So, and this bill is just one of many. Like there is an avalanche of bills. There's a trio of bills down there that are coming after the ability of schools to raise certain levies. One of those bills, House Bill 422, wants to raise the threshold to pass a levy if it's over 2 mils to 66% of the vote. A nearly impossible ask. Nobody votes 66% of the time on anyone or anything, right? But they've weaponized their own rules against us, and now they're trying to game the system so that we will be starved of all funding. And please, somebody step in and hear me out.
I'm Eric Belcher, Superintendent of Point Area City Schools. Interesting that they alluded to how the burden has shifted, and now all of a sudden, we feel for our taxpayers, we feel for our community members, our grandparents, our aunts and our uncles, and the families of our kids when they get that tax bill and they see what percent is going to our school districts. It's easy to understand in their mind where that money is going to. What they don't see is how that burden has shifted over the last 25 years. The most scariest words ever mentioned before were, we're from the government and we're here to help. This is exactly where we're at today. This is not solving the issue. What it actually is doing, the real issue on property tax reform is that shift of burden on property taxes shifted to your local taxpayers and to your agricultural community away from the business. I don't think we would be in this situation right now if we were to maintain those numbers from the early 2000s. You would have roughly about a 30% less on your local property tax bill. And make no mistake, that was not caused by schools. That was caused by our state legislature.
Ethan, to answer your question, we don't have input into the state share. We don't volunteer to say, all right, I want 20, I want 40. They tell us the state share we get. The only impact we have is how do we fill that hole after it. And I'd tell, if you were in Holland, I'd say, I pay taxes too, and so do my parents that are retired. But how do we balance this so that all of the services you get residing wherever you live, you're protected and safe and have the life you want? So we can't promise this all goes away and there's no property taxes, because it's a bag of taxes. So if they're going to take the property taxes away, what other taxes are going to pop up to fill the hole? So somewhere, somehow, if we want fire, police, libraries, safe roads, good school systems, where's it going to come from? Is it going to be this tax? Is it going to be that tax? If you're talking about privatizing everything, then the gap will grow drastically between the have and have-nots. Any new questions?
I was gonna say, I think that leads to the question of, so then what is the sustainable option for funding schools going forward?
I always have something to say. I think, I'm John Common, I'm the treasurer at Waseon Schools. The bipartisan bill that was passed about 6 years ago called the Fair School Funding Act was the solution. I know if that were fully implemented today, that Waseon would be able to stay off the ballot for the unforeseeable future. And whether you're a large district like a Springfield or an Anthony Wayne or Perrysburg, if that fair school funding plan were implemented, that would keep us all off the ballot today. Because one of the things that's left out of the conversation with why we need to address property taxes is, what does it cost to educate a student? Bipartisan legislation that was passed called the Fair School Funding Plan addressed what does it cost to educate a student and funded it appropriately. So I think that they had the solution, but they chose to reinvest in the private education voucher program. So I think that that's why they ignored the solution that they already had in place.
When we're also seeing, are making a lot of money and being able to benefit off of things coming in like Amazon and these other big businesses, is that a potential solution for helping school districts, having those big businesses come in?
I'll answer one piece of that. You can answer that several ways, but the state share has dropped. Years ago, there was something called tangible personal property that the private industry in your area contributed to. Springfield, Holland had that. They cut that out by 2010, I think. TPP, tangible personal property. That went away. And we had to take that hit back in the day. Now there's another one with this property tax change and reform. There are things that assist us when those big companies come in, whether it be property taxes, whether it be jobs and industry. But what's going to the schools when they come in is less and less. Those opportunities don't impact you like they used to. Maybe else.
I think the truth is what you're seeing now with this rush to reform property taxes is the legislature ignored the problem for years, and now you have a citizen-led initiative to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot next year to ban property taxes in Ohio. So this is their knee-jerk reaction of, oh, hey, we ignored the problem. The ship was sinking for 2 decades, 3 decades, and we ignored it, and now that we're almost underwater, boy, we better do something about it. So they're very much like trying to scramble to throw, I mean, they're all down there trying to get their FaceTime, throwing their names out there. I've got a property tax reform bill, you know, with the idea that, hey, we can really stick it to public schools because they're terrified of this, you know, ballot initiative, which, listen, your average voter is going to look at that and say, oh, I don't have to pay property taxes. That's going to pass overwhelmingly. It's also going to create a, what was it, like $48 billion hole in the Ohio budget. Services have to be provided. That's the government's job. And Matt listed off some of those, you know, your roads, your fire, your police, and you call 911 and they say, this number's been disconnected, sorry. You know, that has to be paid for. And, you know, what's the alternative? If you eliminate property taxes, they've already gone to a flat income tax in Ohio, and they've talked about wanting to eliminate that. That leaves what? A massive sales tax on everything, you know? Things have to be paid for. You want to turn on your tap and have clean water, you know, that takes money. You want to drive down roads that aren't falling apart, that takes money. You want to have good public schools, that takes money. But again, they ignored the problem for years and years and years, told the local communities, you figure it out. Everybody got mad. You know, it was a true lack of leadership on the part of the legislature.
And businesses coming into a community, that is beneficial for all the reasons Mr. Eha shared, but also oftentimes those businesses ask for an abatement of their property taxes for a period of time, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. And that abatement means property tax isn't being collected from that business. So the increase in a business in the community brings families, brings more jobs to the community. Those are all positives. But there's also oftentimes an abatement asked for.
There's obviously a Republican majority in both chambers of the legislature. So I don't think realistically there will be any fair school funding formula in the near future. What is some things that you guys are doing? Obviously press conferences like this are helpful to get the word out and to spread the word, but are you working with your local state reps? What is some of the other things that you guys are doing as you navigate this area?
As you look at this, you have superintendents and treasurers representing schools from Henry County, Ottawa, Lucas, Williams, and Wood, at least. On this one, I apologize. We do exactly what you had shared. We call, we send emails, and we do all that talking, but we do that in groups as well of superintendents and treasurers, trying to impact the outcome, a positive outcome for public school education with our state reps, with our senators, and we've done that. We bring them to the table. We invite them into this room, into their conference rooms. We do that all the time, both parties. Both parties get those invites. Sometimes we get great responses. Sometimes we don't hear anything. But that effort, that's a lot of work to do too. When you talk about what a teacher does in the classroom and all the attention they have to give those 25 to 30 kids, that is beyond a full-time job. A bus driver with 60 to 80 kids behind them, when they're on that road, that is a full-time job that takes all your attention. When you talk about what superintendents and treasurers do every single day, that is beyond a full-time job as well. And we do throw in that effort to work with our legislators to positively impact the outcome for public education. Sometimes that's dollars. Sometimes that's rules and laws that they give us about what we have to teach, what we have to do. And that list is never ending of all the things they put on public schools to do. And the great majority come with $0 to do them. Like I said, in Springfield, that state share is below 20%. We get $6.5 million this year to educate 3,500 children. Preschool gets almost zero money, but we know it's good for everybody. Preschool financially can, on paper, looks like a burden to public schools because of the cost. But the payoff educationally has no price tag. It's incredible. But we have no dollars to do that. And there's laws that say we have to provide preschool to certain children, and we want to do that. We talk about that specific topic with state reps and senators all the time as well.
The truth is, support for public education is not a partisan issue. If you go into our communities, a lot of us represent rural, conservative communities that support their public schools. It's only a partisan issue for the elected officials in Columbus who have put a target on our backs. And that's the plain and simple truth of it.
Something else we all do is share with our community, try to take all of the information around bills and legislation and the workings of a school district and try to put that into 1 or 2 page summary so our community understands what the legislation in Columbus means to us, but then to also give them some non-school resources where they can go look at data and inform their own decisions and therefore contact their senator and representatives to share their opinions.
When you do that and you're talking to these community members, I mean, do you see that there's kind of a gap in them understanding whether it's like the 20 mills or how the funding works? I mean, where do you think the biggest point for educating the community? What do they need to currently be trying to teach themselves?
I'll start with the funding packet is 33 pages long that defines how public schools are funded in the state of Ohio. And I've said this too, many state legislators don't even know how that works. And to explain it to a parent, and really all they care is about how their kid's performing, and that's all they have to. A parent doesn't have to understand all these things, but we want them to understand it's important to support your public school so then we can in turn support your child. There are great gaps in the funding and even how legislation even works. For some people, that is a foreign language. And for a lot of people, the funding model in the state of Ohio to actually calculate it, being 33 pages long, that is a foreign language to many people. Did we answer that question?
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's confusing, I mean, for people who are involved in it. So, I mean, for the people who aren't, I think it can be scary, and that's where maybe they don't even take the time to learn it. Like, do you guys see that when you're talking to people, that they just, it's not even that they don't want to know, they just don't understand?
I think that when you go out with a ballot and a levy, that ultimately the people at the end of the day just want to know what the dollar amount is. When you start talking mills, it gets confusing, and then trying to convert that to dollars. At the end of the day, they just want to know, is it a cup of coffee a day? Is it a pizza a day? Is it, a Netflix subscription a month? What does that cost to me? And I think that's a good way to internalize it anyway as a voter and a taxpayer. What is the true impact on me from that increase in potential property taxation?
I hate to be doom and gloom, but 2.9?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're at 2.3 million over 3 years.
okay.
2.4 are.
So everyone between $2 and $3 million.
We can say
And that's
Yeah.
and every year
Yeah.
after that third year is 1.3 million for us. So
Okay.
I mean, it's,
So it doesn't stop it.
no.
Okay, and we talked about this, was $1.7 billion giving back to our very loyal, hardworking taxpayers. That, right, we have, I'm assuming here, but you kind of alluded to it, we have built budgets already, we have set plans aside, we have started, whether it's hiring people or starting new programs and facilities and things to help our children. We've put these things in motion that now we just got $1.7 billion pulled out from under us, correct? Okay.
Ethan, you talk about clickbait too. I mean, this is calculated, right? They want to paint public schools as anti-religion because we're complaining about vouchers, and they want to paint us as pro-tax because we're sitting here saying we need these funds, right? And the ridiculous part of that is that it couldn't be further from the truth, right? Come out to Otsego, I challenge any one of you. Come pray at the poll with us. Come to Fellowship of Christian Athletes on a Wednesday. Come pray with our teachers before school throughout the hallways. Like these are our community members. These are church-going, religious people, right? We aren't anti-religion, right? We're looking at the state constitution and saying, wait a minute here, hold on. Don't tell us you don't have money for us, but you have $2 billion for them, and then tell us we have to accept everything that comes in, cannot turn anyone away. But those organizations have zero accountability and can just say, oh, nope, you're not coming here, you need to go over here, right? And make us pay for those things, right? So the idea that they're trying to put us in that corner is absurd, right? So I think that's where you ask some of the things we're doing. We're doing these things today because we do need our community members to know. We need our media to also help us share that story with our community members that, we agree, we pay these property taxes. We know that property tax reform needs to be done right, but the way they're approaching this and the way they're doing this is just not fair. So I think this is an important event to have to educate the community on some of this stuff.
And I'll just throw in, come visit any of the special needs classes that are happening right in the buildings in our districts. We're serving kids with multiple disabilities, autism, hearing impairments, visual impairments, and we don't turn anyone away. And we are obligated as districts to serve kids, and we embrace that. That's something we truly believe in, the public ed system for all students.
And what she shared is its own separate press conference. And you talk about the true cost to educate a child. A typical child versus a gifted child versus a beautiful child that has great needs, health, whatever it may be. When you talk about our state share, to educate a child with severe needs, it can be over $100,000 a year that the school system pays. The dollars we got from the federal and state might only equal $20,000 to $30,000. That $70,000 to $80,000 is coming from the general fund. That is coming from those local property tax dollars. We were established, Kevin O'Shea says that they paint us as pro-tax. However, when this whole thing started, before anyone in this room was even born, we were established on public property tax dollars. Okay? We came out of tax dollars to establish the education we provide, the services we provide, the safety we provide, and the food we provide. Hundreds of thousands of children across the state of Ohio. But there is another press conference I'd love to do on the cost to educate a child that not everybody knows. And the math does not make sense when it comes to the support from the state and the federal government to educate any child, let alone just a typical child.
And to reiterate some things that Mrs. Ware said, we across Ohio have been sharing services for a very long time. Prior to most of us being born, all of us being born, like Mr. Yeha said. But the legislators are saying that's an answer to shared service. We are already doing that. For example, I can't share my school psychologist with another school district because his caseload is so large. But when we can share services, we are already doing that.
I know Kevin talked about the $3 million in 3 years, and you talked about some of the things that will be impacted, like extracurriculars, bus routes, things like that. We've heard from Perrysburg what will happen if their levy fails in November. Is that a reality that all of you guys are looking at, cutting bus routes, cutting extracurriculars if property tax reform continues in the way that it's going now?
The answer to that is yes, and they're not threats, as you said, it's the reality. we don't make threats, but everything has to be considered when it comes to how do we still operate and offer a program that affects as many kids as possible. So those are realities, whether it's during the year or after the summer break. We have to open up and share what is now gone. But when you talk about a state share that falls and/or shortening the property tax income that we collect, everything has to be looked at. Like I said, there is no other way for us to gain income. There isn't. We get a small share per child for attendance. But when you talk about what we need to operate and continue what we're doing, if you take away, and it's not the same for all of us, you take away $500,000 from one, that could impact them tremendously. If you take away 3.1 from someone else, it's going to impact them tremendously. So it's not all the exact same when you look at all the different schools here and the sizes. They're not threats, it's reality reducing things. Springfield lost 17 jobs from last school year to this year, which we had to trim down. And we try to do that without impacting our kids too much. But there are things we're not offering today that we did last year.
I think Matt said it great. We have to try to protect, so they don't care about that. And the other thing I would say is, in addition to, the challenges of dealing with the growing number of special ed students that we all have, childhood poverty is on the rise in the state. And our kids, 40% of my students are on free and reduced lunch in Swanton. And they rely on us for, 2 meals a day. They rely on us to send food home on the weekends. They rely on us for all manner of other things just to help them have a successful school experience that go beyond just, here's your Chromebook, here's your math textbook, and all that is in jeopardy. Tom Hostler said it best years ago to me. He said, every school district is always one failed levy away from financial ruin. That's pretty much how we all operate.
We're there.
And I think it summarizes, actually, we're all here to provide a strong education, and we know what that means. It's more than just providing an education, it's providing opportunities and services in order to make our students successful in the future. And we all know that with every program you provide, every service you provide, there's a cost to it. And without having the funds to be able to pay for those, we know that that impacts our students.
Yeah, not to make it all about Otsego, this is what I can speak most on, but 2 years ago, we failed our levy by 25 votes, right? And we responded to our taxpayers. We said, okay. They said no. We cut $750,000 out of our budget, which in our world, we cut a counselor. We cut our business elective at the high school. We reduced it by a kindergarten teacher. So some people may not think that's a big deal, but now we have kindergarten classes that are increased by 5 or 6 kids in a class as you divide those out into less teachers. Our caseloads at the high school with kids who have needs and need to see a counselor have one counselor to go to now. So 2 counselors who had 200 kids on each steps, 1 counselor with 400 kids they're trying to service, right? So I know the big story, the fun story to report on is extracurriculars, because of course that's the heart of our communities. It's what people love to come out and see, but we do very real things every day. And when we cut down on those services, the impact that it has that maybe everyone doesn't see on a regular basis because our counseling meetings don't happen on a Friday night under the lights, but they're very real and our kids feel those things. And I think that's just really important to understand. Like, I get we're going to talk about busing and extracurriculars and things like that, but we're making very real cuts into very real programs that have a huge impact and that our community relies on. So I think that's important too.
And you got to also look at schools. 80% of our budget are in people. We're in the people business. So when you talk about reducing 80% of $3 million, that's going to be in real-time jobs. We were unfortunate. We had a levy that we could not pass. We just actually passed one of those 25%. And one of the big things was we had to cancel bus services outside the state now. And you talk about something that just set on your heart for that entire year. And then you just can't flip a switch to bring these back. Because anybody here will tell you, bus drivers aren't there anymore. People aren't driving. So to go back, we saved $350,000 over that time. but the amount of trying to get this back, it took us at least 7 months to try getting bus. I hope it never gets back to that again for any school district and anywhere in the state of Ohio. That is actually horrible for the school and the people who care about kids, and it's horrible for those parents.
Yet if you ask him, I'm sure he is required, though, if someone goes to a school that they choose to go to outside your district, you are required to bus them.
That is correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure that.
So we can't thank you enough for being here.